West High School Gymnasium in Des Plaines, Illinois. For it is the time for the final trial of the U.S. men's Olympic gymnastics team. An even dozen of the very best men gymnasts coming here as winners from elimination trials in Berkeley, California. A capacity crowd on hand to greet them and watch them. Compulsory competition concluded last night. The optionals of the final competition will take place tonight. And only 7 of these young gymnasts will win a precious spot on the U.S. Olympic team. Hello, I'm Keith Jackson. And this is the platform where all of these contestants in the U.S. Men's Olympics gymnastics trials want to be, right here, because this is where the winners will stand, and the overall champion will stand on top. The overall champion, of course, the result of total points accumulated out of the 6 areas of competition: the floor exercise, the pommel horse, still rings, vaulting, parallel bars, and the high bar or the horizontal bar. Let's reflect back now and watch the top performance in floor exercise. John Crosby, 21-year-old, 5'5", 125-pound senior, Dean's List English major from Southern Connecticut College.
John came into this sport as a tumbler, and I think we'll see that it pays off, especially in this event. He mounts with a super double back somersault and really nails it. This is exactly the kind of risk that John must take if he wants to get anywhere in international competition.
That'll wake up judges all over the world, wouldn't it, Gordy?
You betcha. And I think that John's maybe the best chance we have for international success.
John actually excels in this for kind of an unusual reason. In his high school days, his school had no apparatus. They had the floor exercise mat, and that was it. And so consequently, as he kept himself in shape, he did a great deal of work in floor exercise, and he has become outstanding. And here is that strength move. Makes it so smooth. He's wearing short pants in contrast to the other fellows who are wearing the long trousers, Gordy. Does he have the choice?
Yes, this is his option, and I think he feels that he has outstanding leg form, and it's to his advantage to wear short pants, and I think I'm inclined to agree with him. In this event, John really makes everything look easy, and that's how it has to go. Now, he's winding up for his dismount. There's a round off. And a double twisting back somersault, super difficulty, and a nice finish.
So that's a look at the top performance in the floor exercise, John Crosby, who scored a 9.7. We'll look at 2. First, let's have a look at Jim Ivasek, a junior at the University of New Mexico.
Well, Jim is obviously having some problems, and this is indicated by the bent legs and the sort of out-of-balance condition. He's got it back under control now, but he's still swinging in a very low plane. His feet are under the upper level of the side horse. In order to score, he's got to get his hips away from his hands. He's got to stretch his body out. Now he's breaking into his scissors work, and this is part of the requirement for this event. Now notice that his hips stay very close to his hands, and they don't get much elevation above the horse.
But let me ask you this, Gordy. Let's say that a young man knows this is not a strong event. Is it not better to be stock and stay secure?
Absolutely. He did finish the work, and that's important.
Jim Ivasek, 8.9. Now for contrast, a look at Steve Hugg on the pommel horse.
Now he starts out working behind his back right off the bat, and this is an international characteristic. There he's behind his back again. He's taking the risk that he must take if he wants to score in the Olympic Games.
Immediately, I think we can see, too, that he's working higher than Ivasek.
You're right, Keith. He gets stretched out, he gets his hips away from his hands, and he keeps a higher plane.
Now, watch here as he goes into the scissors.
Yeah, see how his hips are pushing way out above the pommel.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a little bump right there. They're going to take away from it?
No, it's an incidental break. The leg form might deduct, but not the brushing of the horse.
So, Steve Hugg, scoring 9.5 in the pommel horse, and he leads in overall points. And I thought it was an outstanding performance. Steve Hugg, who scored a 9.5. So the competition actually started in the still rings. We're looking now at Marshall Abner. He's from Penn State University. And Marshall Abner is in 5th place, very much in contention.
This is kind of his event. He works the rings real well. He has real strong athletic ability. Now, that's an iron cross, and something of that nature is required. There's an underrated skill. That's a front uprise, and it's difficult to do a front uprise and catch the ring steady, as we mentioned.
How about holding now? How long do you have to hold these positions?
He has to hold every position a minimum of 2 seconds, except the cross, which is 3 seconds.
Wow, 3 seconds. That's long.
Double twister, super dismount.
This is a very knowledgeable crowd here at Maine West High School Gymnasium, and they respond immediately as we reflect back and look at that dismount in slow motion.
Notice how he's going to tuck his arms in close to decrease the radius of his spin in order to get around twice. That's one of the toughest dismounts in that event.
So Marshall Avener does very well, scoring 9.5. This is John Crosby. He's 21 years of age. 5'5", 125 pounds. John Crosby is fourth in the standings. He has 180.5 points.
Keith, his daddy, is a police sergeant in New York City. And John is just as tough in his element here in gymnastics. He had a problem there. He missed his handstand. He's a tiger. In fact, he tied the great Nakayama in another event.
He's holding pretty well, but he's getting sway. You see him moving past the bars, so he never really did still the ring. But he holds that position very well.
Right. He has to dismount, doesn't he?
And the score for John Crosby, 9-1. And he stays in fourth place. Let's go back now to slow motion and take another look at that moment of trouble that John had.
His timing is early. He's off on his timing. His center of gravity never gets on top of his hands, and consequently he falls out of the handstand.
So John scores 9-1, stays in fourth place. More in just a moment. Makoto Sakamoto. Moving on to the still rings right now. He is in second place with 181.8 points. He's 28 years of age, 5'1", 120 pounds. And as he goes up to read his biography in gymnastics, will take longer than his routine is going to take, because he has won all kinds of awards, including 6 times the AAU National.
He could be a finalist for our country in the Olympic Games in this event. I think this is where his big opportunity lies. Now, he's keeping those rings exactly where he wants them. He had them swinging a little bit after his mount, and then just got them stopped again. Eases down very nicely into his cross.
Held it very well.
Very, very well-disciplined lad. How do they say today? He's got his head together?
Oh, boy.
This is the best performance we've seen so far by far. A little lazy on his double. Wow. That's too bad after that fine performance.
That cost him, Gordy?
It'll cost him a lot. Probably 3/10, 2 to 3/10.
Let's take another look at Sakamoto's dismount, see what might have caused his trouble.
Watch how early he releases the rings. He's much too early with his release, which causes the somersault to be way under-rotated.
Scores for Sakamoto, 9 points.
The score for Makoto Sakamoto, 9:05, so you can imagine what he might have done had he not fallen on the dismount. He might very well have been up around a 9.4.
I think they charged him more than 3/10. I think they charged him about a half a point.
So he totals 190.85 points. This is the man right here bidding to take second place away from Sakamoto, George Greenfield. It'll take an exceptional performance by George to do it.
George has had a good series, both in the preliminary meet in Berkeley and in this meet. He's picked up the 2 events in which he's weak, the side horse and or the pommeled horse, rather, in the rings. Now, being a non-ring man, essentially, he's working real strong here.
But he's not able to hold them still in that position, as you can see them swing past the bar. He did not hold them with the stillness of a Sakamoto, for example.
That's correct, but he isn't swinging to an objectionable amount yet. See how he got them stopped when he came down to his front lever.
Right.
Full twisting dismount. Nice exercise for George. Keith, we might point out he never held a cross. He isn't required to, but it certainly shows that he is not a ring man by birth.
Let's go back and look at him again in slow motion now. Is he able to pick up, do things here that get him by without the cross?
Well, yes, in a way he is, Keith. He's required to press into one handstand, and that's what we're observing now. He is doing the press into the handstand, and this, at least partially, fulfills the strength requirement.
So it was, in effect, a solid performance by George Greenfield.
And the scores for Greenfield.
George Greenfield comes up with a 9.3, moves him closer to second place, but he does not catch Makoto Sakamoto. Steve Hugg leads with 182.55 points. Steve Hugg coming off his junior year at Stanford University.
Keith, we've had a crop of gymnasts with back injuries this year, more than usual, and this reminds me that Steve Hugg had to lay out of competition for an entire year with an injury to the growth centers in his vertebrae. Look at that, just like a rock. Puts him right where he wants him.
He's very strong, according to
There, he made his little mistake, though. Now let's see if he can get him stopped. That's also the mark of a good gymnast, you know, to correct the mistake. Certainly he did. Now that little swing there is just fine with the judges.
Steve, the 1972 NCAA individual all-around champion.
Holds a nice straight handstand. I like to see the handstand stacked up like that. He does a double dismount. Nice job.
So you get an idea why Steve Hugg went to the still ring, leading in points, and hardly any question but what he is leading still as he walks away.
In slow motion, we see the mistake is that Steve drops his hips when they're way on one side of the uprights, which creates the swing, which causes a deduction in points. Now he's going to rotate his body around. He drops his hips down and partially corrects the earlier mistake, which would not be a deduction.
9.25 the score for Steve Hugg coming off the still rings, which will give him a point total of 191.80. So after the still rings, it is Steve Hugg, Makoto Sakamoto, George Greenfield, John Crosby, Marshall Avener, and Jim Culhane. We'll have a look at the vaulting right after this. In the vaulting basic elements of these: the flight to the horse off the takeoff board, position on and beyond the horse, and, of course, the landing. And we are developing a pretty good scrap between Jim Culhane and Tom Linder for the 6th place in the point standings. Tom Linder, who is at the present time in 7th place or in the alternate position, he trails Jim Culhane by 0.75 points for the 6th spot on the team. Big moment for him.
I wonder if the judges could see the legs part from their angle. We could see a little split in his feet, but I'll bet the judges couldn't see that.
Let's take another look in slow motion and see if the angle was a friend to Tom right here.
Has an aggressive run, catches the horse and his feet are spread way apart, but I don't think they see it.
9.3 for Tom Linder, which gives him 196.35 points. He will hold 7th place by some margin. The question now is whether or not Jim Culhane can keep him in 7th place. And let's watch Jim Culhane now. He's in 6th place.
And Keith, he's had trouble in the warm-ups. He hasn't gotten one good vault in the warm-ups. He's got to be a little bit lucky here.
Tom Linder, who is in 7th spot or in the alternate position, bidding for that final team position. And Culhane.
I don't know, Keith. I don't think he got away with it.
Linder trailed by 0.75 points going into this event, the vault. And Culhane did not come off of it cleanly.
He makes about 3 mistakes here. His feet are spread, his shoulders are way ahead of his hands, and watch him arch out to make his landing. These things all constitute very poor technique and should probably result in a big deduction.
A 9.1 for Jim Culhane. 196.90 for Culhane. He still has 6th place, but only by 55 100ths of a point ahead of Tom Linder. So with 2 events to go, here are the standings. Steve Hugg, Makoto Sakamoto, George Greenfield, John Crosby, Marshall Avener, Jim Culhane, and in 7th, or the alternate position, Tom Linder.
Here it involves this young man, Gary Morava, who really has had little time to work at his gymnastics since last April. But he's made it to the final trials, and he is stuck in there. He is hung in there with a gutty performance, coming off a very bad back injury last April. And this is what happened to him just a few moments ago. He took a fall, hard fall. As a matter of fact, his second fall in the competition. Now, when he made that fall, he stepped back in pain, but indicated to the judges that he wanted to complete it, and he did.
Keith, that fall cost him 1 full point for falling off, plus the deduction for missing the trick initially. And you can see that the poor fella is absolutely exhausted. His muscles simply won't react. But he's working with the heart of a lion.
So that was one of the highlights in the parallel bars. Here are the other one. Makoto Sakamoto, who scored a 9.6 on the parallel bars to remain in second place, and this is a master technician at work.
Indeed, he is a master technician. He's very thoughtful about his work. He controls his body magnificently, and this is why he scores so well in this sport. That's a straddle down, straddle up, press to a handstand, Stützkier, and he'll really wail on his dismount. Front with a half.
This is the high bar, horizontal bar, if you want to call it that. Seems to me, Gordon, that you know this very well, don't you?
Yes, in a negative sense. Seems to me that I fell off this thing in 14 straight dual meets when I was a junior in college and really gained an appreciation for it. In fact, at that time, I began to wonder whether it took strength or luck or divine help or what kept you on the high bar. And in studying it a little bit, I found that strength is really not a factor. The gymnast simply hooks his hands, swings around loose, and the best high bar men squeeze the least. It'll be interesting to watch that when we're going through it.
All right, Gordy, now the standings as we go into the final event. Steve Hugg, a comfortable lead on top. Makoto Sakamoto in second place. George Greenfield, John Crosby, Marshall Avener, Jim Culhane, and Tom Linder in that fight for the 6th position.
It's become relatively academic as to which man is going to be the all-around points leader when the final trials are over. This young man, Steve Hugg, has every chance in the world to have it that way. He was the 1972 NCAA individual all-around champion. So he's looking now to win the big prize in the final trials. Because in effect, what he is doing is merely winning a place on the U.S. Olympic team. 8.5 feet above the floor. Here he goes.
Well, he's a champion on the high bar, too. He learned most of his style in his year stay in Japan and really swings on the high bar. Now, here's a part of his exercise that I've always liked. If I recall his exercise, he's going to pitch this thing clear out of the gym. Real high full twister.
Gordy, let's go back in slow motion for a moment and look at Steve's exercise here on the high bar. I had the feeling he kind of went conservative.
I think he's playing it real close to the vest. He's in a pretty good position in the meet, and he's not taking any chances. He's leaning over the bar quite a ways. He doesn't pass through the handstand. He doesn't hang that stalder chute right up to the optimum.
And the scores for Steve Hugg.
Score for Steve Hugg.
9.45.
9.45. And that gives him an even 220 points, and we'll continue right after this. Now, here is George Greenfield, and George is in a struggle for 3rd place with John Crosby. Leads by a 1/4 of a point.
About 4 years ago, George was working high bar in a clinic in Tucson, had a bad slip, fell off the bar, and fractured his neck. And I'd say he's making a positive recovery.
Picture gives you some idea of the velocity of the swing.
They sure stretch that bar around, don't they?
Whoa.
1.5 twisting, reverse flyaway, and that's the only one of those you'll see in this meet, too.
You talk about pitching it out of the gym. You know, George is having a very good meet, Gordy.
You bet he's having a good meet. He really loves what he just did on this high bar. Let's take a look at it.
There's the release. There's one turn, there's a half turn, and he sticks it and loves it.
It takes a lot of moxie to shake off that kind of injury and continue, and look at that. 9.60 for George Greenfield gives him a final point total of 218.35. Makoto Sakamoto now coming to the horizontal bar. There is no way that Sakamoto can catch Steve Hugg, so he is destined to finish second.
Well, let's just study some real fine high bar technique then, because this is the boy that can really do it. That's called a reverse stalder shoot. Does a little pivot on top of the bar, does a front stalder shoot. Pops out of it early, rear ball over the top of the bar. And that's a Japanese boy doing a German giant swing. And another full twisting hack this time. He's done a nice job.
I guess the best word to use here is craftsman.
You bet he's a craftsman, and he's very, very highly respected in this world as a gymnast. He's been in the Olympic Games. He's scored high. They appreciate him, and they'll give him a score that he deserves.
It is important that international judges know something about you when you come in. The higher your marks you come in, the better off you're going to be. 9.7 for Makoto Sakamoto, the highest score we have had. Full point ahead of, tenth of a point ahead of George Greenfield, who was superb. But a 9.7 is our next entry.
John Crosby.
219.55. Now here is John Crosby. He trails George Greenfield in fourth place by a quarter of a point. But remember, George Greenfield had an outstanding performance on the horizontal bar at 9.6. So if John really wants to go for third place, if it means that much to him, he's going to really have to go. He'll need a 9.85 to tie.
Well, I don't think he can do that, but he's sure a fine athlete. He's got just a model attitude. I wish every kid I coached had the attitude that John Crosby has. I just love to listen to him, love to watch him. Here he comes for his dismount. Real pretty double.
Score for John Crosby, 9.55.
A 9.55 for John Crosby. Tom Lindner walking up there. He is in quite a battle with this young man, Jim Culhane. We'll have a look at him in just a moment. Before we see the Culhane-Lindner showdown, let's go back a couple of hours when I asked 30-year-old Jim Culhane how much longer he'll continue in gymnastics.
That's very difficult to tell. I'm going to try to keep competing, keep working out until either injuries or just financial responsibilities make it impossible for me to.
That was earlier tonight. Now let's get on with the showdown. Currently in sixth position. Jim Culhane up on the high bar right now has a .35 lead over Tom Lindner.
He's pulling out all the stops, Keith. He does a nice straddle over the top of the bar for openers. He looks like he's at home. There's just mixed one hand into an eagle grip and does a full turn over the bar. A little problem in his kip there is going to cost him about half of a tenth. You can sense the pressure. He gets out of it all right.
Well, he woke up the crowd with that distance.
Yeah, he did. But you could tell that the kid was really feeling it up there.
So as Jim Culhane walks away, Tom Lindner comes to the bar. Good marks for Culhane. Jim Culhane at 9.45. Now, if there wasn't pressure, Tom Lindner's got a full load of it right now because he's going to have a 9.85 to win.
Well, you never know. You're going to notice, though, when Tom works, that he's going to work very close to the limit all the time. He's going to be right on the ragged edge. Cast right to a handstand. Almost stops it on top. Bang, right back to another handstand. This is what we call amplitude. Or virtuosity, and he can get rewarded for that, and he might get his 9.85. He's scared to death, isn't he?
I like it.
He's just stretched all the time. His elbows haven't bent yet.
11 tricks required. Well, Culhane responded admirably with a great performance, but Linder pursuing will let him up. He had to have a 9.80 to tie for sixth place, a 9.85 to win. 9.80, it's a tie.
Isn't that exceptional after two complete gymnastics meets to tie like that with all those chances to make mistakes and lose points or add?
So we've got a tie between Jim Culhane and Tom Linder for the number 6 spot.
Keith, I don't think I have ever experienced this happening in another Olympic trial. What do they do in the case of that tie?
Cody, I think this may be the best exercise I've ever seen on a horizontal bar.
He is just absolutely, completely extended, and then he just rips his flyaway. Sticks it right in the mat.
Great job by Tom Linder. Great job by Jim Culhane. We have a tie for 6th place. What about an alternate? I don't know. We'll ask Abe Grossfeld, the men's Olympic gymnastics coach, about it right after this. Well, the coach of the U.S. men's Olympics gymnastics team is Abe Grossfeld, Southern Connecticut State College. Abe, you got a decision to make now. You get these two fellows respond with a great challenge and a tie for 6.
This is the first time that this has ever happened, and it will present basically not really a problem, but in a sense I have to make a decision who will be the top 6 men. And when we're finished with the training session just before the Olympic Games, I'll name the lineup.
That'll keep everybody alert at the Olympic camp. The big crowd standing and applauding. Men's gymnastics team that'll go to the 1972 Olympics.